So welcome to Lunar Yoga. This is going to be kind of a slow, like a little bit of flow and a little bit of yin kind of style. Tonight's class, we are in a waxing lunar phase. So thinking about or kind of focusing on what we want to add to the practice. You might, if you don't normally pay attention to the breath, add paying attention to the breath. If you normally would, what am I trying to say? Just kind of consider like how you might, what role increase plays in your practice. And if you often push the edge too hard, that might be like something to consider. Like, oh, I normally push past the edge. Maybe today I'll find that edge and kind of hover, a little increase, a little decrease, kind of work that line. Maybe you'll, add just a little bit more attention to details, or a little more attention to if you've got a tender body part, being really attentive to that tender place might be the way to kind of work with it. Tonight, the way I'm going to focus it, this is the flower moon, is the cycle that we're in. There are other names for this moon too. Grass growing moon. I'm trying to remember what some of the other ones. Hair moon, I think, was one maybe. But flower moon is definitely, like, there's flowers everywhere. So in where I am currently located in the world. And so can I create a sense of sort of tuning into the flower or the kind of blossoming around my heart, and can I heart center my practice? So that is the sort of focus that I'm going to take for my practice over this lunar phase of waxing. So I invite you to that, if that sounds amazing and good, to give yourself a chance to be heart-centered and to explore what does it mean to be heart-centered. So we're going to start with some kind of a little heart opener, a little chest opener. So this could be a saddle or a hero pose where you kneel, sit down, and kind of lean backwards. I'm going to do a supported fish pose. So I'm going to use a pillow for this. You could also take a blanket and roll it up. And then put that down the length of your spine. You could use yoga blocks. And if you do that, because they're kind of firm, you want to get your shoulder blades on the block, but the block can go in between or wide. And you just kind of find the most comfortable place for your back to sit on the block. So I'm going to use a pillow. And then I'll get to the legs in a second, because there are options. Okay, so what I'm after is the sense that the tissue in the front of my chest is widening, right? Is making space for itself. And that's normally, if that's the right word, when we talk about heart openers, we talk about the front part of the body. But maybe as you settle into a shape like this, you realize, that's not where I'm at tonight. And instead you might focus on a pose that opens the back of your heart. So maybe a child's pose would be a better starting place for you tonight. So you can explore that as well. Now, if you do decide to do something like this fish, your feet could be in like a little butterfly shape. The legs could be out straight. Or you can find a little spot where it feels nice to let the feet rest on the floor with the knees bent. So this is a kind of variation on a constructive rest. You can also experiment with how wide the arms go out. The arms might even go up, overhead, depending on how that feels. I'm not disliking that. I might hold it for a few breaths. So for me tonight is that I want to play with or practice with kind of curiosity about making all of the implications of the heart that in a physical zone, but also my emotional body and the things that I really care about, making that the center of my practice tonight. Do this little breath pattern. I'll invite you to play with it and see if you like it, where I'm just going to notice a different lung with each breath. So I'm going to inhale, notice my right lung, and then with the next inhale, notice the left lung. And I'm just going to switch back and forth. Just anytime the inhale comes, I'll shift to the opposite lung with my attention. Working with this, just see if you can feel a difference between the two lungs. Come back to the center space between the two. What is that experience? Is that experience the breastbone, the rib cage? Is the experience somehow deeper? Is it the vertebrae of your spine? Is there a sense of spaciousness right there in the center between the two lungs? Does that feel like it's close rather than spacious, right? I'm just noticing what you notice. We'll stay for another 3, maybe 4 breaths. If you're doing the little fish, then I'm gonna go ahead and roll myself to the side and go slip the block out, or in this case the pillow, but whatever you've got under you, slip that out. And then if you're doing something like a child's pose or something along that line, then you might join me here on the floor, and you could do little windshield wipers. If You can bring the legs in, do a little happy baby. That feels nice tonight. And again, just kind of noticing. Now, I'm going to keep one leg, and I'm going to let the other one just relax. I'm going to do this little rock the baby. So I'm bringing the thigh, the knee, over the midline of my body. So I'm not rocking my hips. I'm rocking this leg, this femur bone in the socket. So that's the movement pattern. As I come towards the middle, I feel more sensation in this outer hip. As I go this way, it's less. For you, it could be the opposite. Just notice where you feel sensation. Choose the right amount. I'm going to get hold of that foot and come back to happy baby, but just half, so that I can use the other side to sort of stretch. I'm going to just repeat those 2 more times. A little rock the baby, for however long that feels nice. This is my favorite thing right now. I don't know why, but it just feels amazing. And then a little half happy baby. And a little rock the baby one more time. And then a little half happy baby. All right. Now, I'm going to let go of this leg. I'm going to give myself a little stretch. Now, I am going to take that leg across into a twist, but you may decide that you just want to do a little banana instead. So just a little side bend. That's a nice alternative. I'm going to do a little bit of both. But the side bend is nice to hang out with. So I'm going to start with a little, just kind of dropping both my legs over to the left. So that leg that I was just rocking around is the guy that's up on top. And you might explore kind of rolling toward the twist and then rolling back down with the shoulders. Kind of feeling how the shoulder girdle shifts as that happens. What happens down the sideways through the outer hip. Sometimes there's a point where it's like, oh yeah, we've got to stop. Like my shoulder isn't going to make it all the way to the floor, right? And that's fine too. Right, I'm going to find a little landing pad, a little landing spot, and take a couple breaths, maybe 3. Just kind of glide into that long crescent moon / banana / there might barely even be any sort of indication of a side bend, but something along that line. And if you've been doing that the whole time, cool. If you're up for it, stay a little longer, and if you want, you can come back to the middle and just pause for a little bit until we do the other side. Lately, I've been as interested in the transition space and the pausing space in between sequences and poses as I have been in the sequence itself. I think it's a really juicy space, a space to really start to feel what the poses do and how it, how the body responds. It's just really lovely. 2, maybe 3 more breaths here. Now the first thing that I do is just notice, like, is there an impulse to move immediately, or is there an impulse to be still for a second? You could do either. There's no wrong answers. It's all an experiment. It's just experiments. What happens when I do this? What happens if I do the opposite? And then as you either lay still or move, what happens? Does the body shift? Does the sensation change? It's kind of attention to detail, again, is kind of one of the options for our practice during this sort of waxing phase. How much more attentive can I become? Okay, so I've got my other leg here. I'm going to do this little rock the baby. Oh. Side is not usually my spicy side, but tonight, ooh, good. Hello. Hello, outer hip. And then I'm going to do the little half happy baby. Then back to the rock the baby. And again, just work these in your own time. You want it to be a little bit faster, a little more robust movement, you can do that. You can do more sets. You can stop at any point. Or follow along, whatever seems like the best option given the circumstances. Sometimes you don't want to think about stuff. Just keep following along. I'll do my best to tell you what we're doing. Oh, goodness. Or you can use them as, suggestions. Oh, my. All right, one more time through this little rock the baby. Half happy baby with a big old stretch. And I'm just going to pause for a moment, and this is where you can turn this into your banana / crescent moon, or come around for the twist. As I did before, I'm going to experiment with this a little bit. I'm just going to let myself kind of roll my shoulder girdle in the same direction as the legs and then back down to the floor. This side's a little different for me. It's like just a little bit less resistance going this way, so it just feels a little softer. Back one more time, and then with sensitivity, I'm just going to roll my shoulders down, try to find that spot where I'm going to hang out for a couple breaths. And I'm just going to slither, glide, gently release into that little crescent moon shape, which you might be hanging out with already. couple more breaths here. And then come back to the center. And again, just notice, is there an impulse to just soften? Is there an impulse to move? And then deciding how to respond. You don't have to always follow the impulse. You can choose to not follow it. And see what happens. Sometimes it's fun to see what happens if you don't follow. Especially in this kind of situation where it's low stakes, because it gives us permission to do that when the stakes are a little higher, when we react to something in real life that maybe we want to respond more skillfully to. Okay, we're going to come to a seat. If it's helpful, sit up on a blanket or cushion. We'll start with some little cat shapes, just kind of moving through the spine. You could do these in a circular shape, where you kind of take the ribs forward and around to the side, or just sort of tuck and tilt the pelvis and let the spine respond, which feels better to me tonight, so I'm going with that one. Just going to make the movement a little smaller and a little smaller until I find a center point. All right, we're going to do a little sequence with the legs that'll take us into some different territory. So along the way, just choose appropriately. So I'm going to start with a deer, which is, I've got about like a 90-ish degree angle between my two thigh bones. Your thigh bone could be up closer, or it could be further back. You could even straighten this leg out behind you and go for the swan or pigeon, whatever you want to call it. You can also sort of lean a little sideways here and let this front portion of the hip be kind of more the focus of, creating spaciousness there. You could do some movement patterns. So I'm going to start a little more upright, and I'm also going to, occasionally this feels really good to me, so I'm going to try it again tonight. I'm going to rock my hip a little forward and a little back to start with. Just kind of explore the sensations that show up across the front of my hip and around the quads, because I can feel, certain spaces in between some of the muscles on the top of my thigh as I rock my hips forward and back in this shape. And again, if I'm going to be heart-centered, I'm going to be kind to my quads and my hip, and find the edge of that sensation, but don't plow too far into it until I've been with it for a second. So that right there gets a little, as I lean my hips backwards, gets a little spicier down this kind of inner edge of one of the quads, wrapping towards that inside edge of my patella, my kneecap, and that's connective tissue. So I definitely I think it's probably a good idea to be kind, not be too pushy there. And then I'm going to transition over into that side stretch, letting myself find that position in the hip that finds that just on the edge of that stretch. Coming up the inner knee, up this inner thigh, up to my hip here. There's a little internal hip rotator, maybe action happening here too. It's just, for you, this might be all about this other hip on the front leg. Like it could be totally different sensation, collection of sensations for you. None of them are wrong. Whatever you feel is what you feel. Just be present for what you do feel. I'm not dictating my practice to you in the notion, with the notion that it should feel that same way to you. It's more giving you a sampling of the kind of attention that I'm paying. All right, I'm gonna come forward, and then I'm gonna bring this leg around. Now I'm gonna come back to the little rock the baby move. This time in a seat, so it's different. And I don't get the same levels of sensation in my hip when I do the rock the baby this way that I do when I do it laying down. So I don't dislike this. I love it, actually. It feels amazing, but it's definitely different. This is one of the, to me, that's one of the fun things about exploring like the same movement pattern in different orientations, because you'll get different sensations. Okay, now you could put your knees on top of each other. You could put your shins on top of each other. I'm gonna put a little block out here and rest my ankle on the block just in front of my knee. And then I'm just gonna bring my knees as close together as I can bring them and still sit up, sit into both sit bones evenly. And this might be better if you lean back a little bit. This might be better if you turn to the diagonal a little bit. It might be nice to fold forward so you can explore the little shape here in the outer hip. If there's any discomfort around the knee, be mindful. Again, maybe there's sensation that doesn't feel inappropriate, but just brings your attention there. So you might explore backing off of that sensation a little bit and then going toward it and sort of wobble along that edge. See if your nervous system gives you any feedback about which side of that edge it would prefer you land on. For me, that just feels like tension, usually in the mouth or the jaw. If I get too close or start to go over the edge, I'll feel like the throat or the back of my tongue or my jaw tighten. And when I back away from that edge, that gets soft again. And we'll stay for another 3 or 4 breaths here. Now, this leg that's up on top, I'm gonna take this guy off. I'm gonna do one more little movement pattern there. It could be rock the baby. I'm just gonna kind of wiggle it out straight. Now, I'm gonna take this leg as close as I can to just kind of straight in front. I am supporting the back of my knee because that's a sensitive area for me, and I'm gonna try to keep this leg as relaxed as possible. So once I get it here, I'm gonna try to release and relax all the muscle. Now, I'm gonna do 2 things. One is I'm gonna lean forward, right? And again, the action here in my leg wants to kick in, so I'm just gonna see if I can keep it a little soft. Then I'm gonna rotate my armpit backwards. I'm just gonna turn my torso a little bit and then come back to the fold. So I'm imagining this whole chest muscle just kind of stretching open, opening like a wing. And then coming back in as I fold, now I'm getting a stretch across my back, right? That feels interesting. This can be sensitive in both areas, the chest muscle and then also the lower back, so be kind. And if you just want to fold forward and hold the pose, you can do that too. I'm going to get to that in a minute. So I'm leading with my arm and I want to lead with my chest. So I'm going to see how I can shift that. Give myself permission to find the most centered place and just let my back soften over, a little round, but not too forceful. I want to keep my lower back in a happy place. Stay for 2, maybe 3 more breaths, really focusing on the way that feels in my back with each inhale. I'm going to come up with an inhale. I'm going to come to a sitting position that feels comfortable. Do a little movement. And then do a little check-in. So I did all this movement with this shoulder that I haven't done with the other shoulder. I had my hips, we've done 3 little poses in a row with my hips in one arrangement, but I haven't done the other side yet. So can I feel the difference there? And then because I'm, my focus for tonight is the heart center, is there a kind of sense of the, physical tissue here in my chest and across my heart? Is there a sense of just the focus being more metaphysical? Energetic? It's the right word. Both. All right, I'm going to give myself a little rinse. And then I'm going to repeat that sequence on the other side. So starting with the deer. And I'm checking in with the deer on the side, and it feels different. This side feels a little spicier, a little, just a little more sensitive. So my movement pattern, which is going to be smaller, right? Not quite as big a range of motion because I'm feeling so much more sensation. And I also just want to watch and listen to the way that I add any tension to this throat, jaw, neck muscle, chest area. Let myself sort of find some length from that inner knee up through the side of my chest, maybe even into my arm. I haven't decided how much of that I want. Maybe a little less. Do a couple more breaths. I'm gonna lean and bring my back leg around. Again, I'm gonna come back to that little rock the baby shape. Again, I'm trying to move the thigh bone. I'm not just turning my waist. I'm just moving my leg bone back and forth. And then I'm gonna see where it might want to land. And again, maybe this is your maybe you have a side difference. Maybe one side's a little spicy, one side's not as spicy. Maybe this is your spicy side, maybe this is the easy side. So you might respond differently. Maybe it's even, both sides. Maybe you want to change the shape up altogether. Just do a different shape. Sit cross-legged, just bring the knees a little closer together, a little farther apart. What's the relationship for me too sometimes? Like, what's the relationship between this hip, my shoulders, my back? Is there a relationship? Sometimes I find like one whole side will be tight. Sometimes it crisscrosses. It'll be like, oh, this side of my neck is tight, but that hip is tight. Tonight it just feels like it's centered on the one side, but it changes. Again, just notice for yourself what's going down. Stay for 2, maybe 3 more breaths. Lean back and unwind and give that whole thing a little opportunity for movement. Again, I'm going to try to line this up so that leg's just straight out in front. And again, I'm going to see if I can keep this leg really relaxed, if I can keep the tension out of my hip and my glutes and my leg. Sometimes the tension's there for a reason. And then I'm going to let myself open the shoulder, kind of again, like aiming with the movement pattern coming from the chest or the ribs, center of my body, as opposed to dragging myself with my arm. And then I'm going to come forward. Noticing some resistance. I'm going to make my movement pattern just a little smaller, a little softer, and see what happens. One more time. And I'm just going to find myself as close as I can get to straight down the center and just relax. And focus on the sensation of the breath in the back. Maybe 4 more breaths. I'm going to let myself inhale all the way up. Ooh. Give everything a little bit of movement. Bring myself to a crissy-crossy legged position. And come back to that little tug and tilt of my pelvis that I started this seated sequence with. Maybe you were doing a little circle with your ribs. You want to come back to that. Actually, the circle feels nicer now than it did at the beginning. So I wouldn't blame you, and I might throw a few circles in myself. Now, just find a position to sit in where you can be present. So if you want to sit on a cushion or kneel or anything along that line, definitely do. Let's just come back to this sense of the breath and a sense of maybe softening. Maybe that softening just takes the form of the rib cage being free to move. Maybe the softening is an intentional kind of kindness or kind of gazing inward with kindness at yourself. So if you did that little lung shift where you pay attention to the left lung and the right lung, closer to the beginning, did you notice a difference? The left lung has 2 lobes, the right lung has 3. The left lung had to give up 1 lobe to make room for the heart. And so sometimes when I think about myself being heart-centered, I think about maybe I should be like the left lung and make room for the heart. And then sometimes I focus on the sort of sensation of blossoming when I, feel love in whatever capacity. There's a sort of sense of kind of almost like a little blossoming sensation that happens there at the heart center. And sometimes it's about like just unloading my shoulders, right? And letting things relax. Notice all of those options for yourself, should you wish to work with this metaphor. If not, carry on. And then we're going to take ourselves to one more little practice before we call it an evening, a day, whatever it might be. And that's going to be some Cobra Sphinx work. So I'm going to start with some little kneeling movements in my hips and my spine. I'm going to take that down to the elbows and continue. And then I'm going to take that all the way down. And lift and release. So I'm not pushing with my arms, but I am letting my arms kind of help hold me when I get to the point where I can lift, right? As much lifting as I can do. For some of us, the lift is gonna like maybe just barely bring the breastbone off the floor. For others, lifting, you know, with just the back muscles will get the whole rib cage off the floor. So however much it is, it might just be, oh, the teeniest, tiniest lift. It doesn't matter how big, it just matters that the lift is happening. And then I'm gonna sort of start to liquefy it and move a little side to side. Do some little shoulder circles in between. And then we're going to let this turn into either a sphinx, resting on the elbows, or a crocodile, where you, oh, that feels nice, where you crisscross the arms and either rest your forehead or your chin, whatever feels better. And then try to let the front of the hip just soften into the floor. You might even find an occasional lengthening of the leg or a little release movement like windshield wipers, and then softening feels really nice. Sometimes just a little side-to-side wobble of the hip feels nice. Releases pressure around the sacrum, right there between your hips and your back. Takes us, glides us towards the territory of the heart center, not all, just having a front, but also having a back. Right? So as we make a little space or we change the shape in the vertebrae, can we notice the protective nature of the back of the heart? We've got this delicious stegosaurus collection almost of little spinious processes, the shoulder blades themselves. Oh, as a little kind of heart protection. If you didn't start this way, then it might be, well, even if you did, it might be nice to glide into a supported child's pose. Add a little pillow or a stack of pillows or blanket to under the chest, so that it feels really supported. I turned my head to one side, but you can do either. Now you could just stay right here. It's nice. Or you can flip yourself back upside down. Turn your child's pose into a happy baby pose one more time. And then you could either put your legs up like on the couch or on an ottoman, a coffee table, whatever you got. Or if you got some pillows or rolled up quilt, you could put that underneath the legs so that the legs are just suspended a little bit. Now, my heels are touched on the floor, so that feels good to me. If my heels were off, I might put a little bit of support under the heels as well. And then if it's chilly where you are, which it's a little chilly where I am, so I'm going to cover with a blanket. If it's super toasty warm, you may not feel the need to have a blanket on you. Going to widen out the space around my shoulder blades. I'm going to try to let my whole heart center just soften. All the muscles around the ribs and around my, my big chest muscles, little teeny chest muscles, just all of the collarbone, shoulder blade kind of place, like everything between both upper arm bones. Just let that whole zone get a little softer all the way down to the tips of the fingers if you can. So we sort of allow ourselves to blossom just a little bit into the flower moon. attention gently back to the breath. Maybe take that little trip of left lung attention and then right lung attention. As you're ready, start to stretch into space, into the breath. I don't know. What are we stretching into? All of the above? Oh, goodness. You could roll to your side or rock yourself up as you see fit. Oh. So thanks for joining me for some lunar yinish practice tonight. Let's take a nice big breath together. Thank you for joining me. Namaste. Peace.